I'm Minnie Johnson, 58, from Portland, Oregon. As a mother of two beautiful children, I never imagined my daughter's wedding day would end with me being accused of theft. After my husband left us when the kids were young, I raised them alone, building what I thought was an unbreakable bond with my Sophia. But one accusation shattered everything we had. The pearl necklace they found in my purse wasn't placed there by me, but the truth would only come to light through a hotel security video the next morning. If you're joining me on this painful journey, please subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. My life before the wedding incident had been relatively peaceful. After 30 years as a dedicated nurse, I was enjoying semi-retirement, picking up occasional shifts at the local hospital while spending more time with my family and pursuing my passion for gardening. That family had once included my ex-husband Frank, who walked out on us when Sophia was 12, and my son Thomas was 10, claiming he needed to find himself. What he actually found was a younger girlfriend and a new life in Florida, leaving me to raise our children alone. Those early years were incredibly difficult. I worked double shifts at the hospital, often coming home exhausted, but still making time to help with homework, attend school events, and create as normal a home life as possible. Money was always tight, but we managed. I remember sewing Sophia's prom dress by hand because we couldn't afford the one she had fallen in love with at the mall. She had cried happy tears when she saw my version, claiming it was even more beautiful than the original. Sophia and I developed an especially close relationship through those challenging years. She was my confidant, and I was hers. When she was accepted to medical school, I felt such overwhelming pride I could hardly contain it. I had worked extra shifts for years to save for her education, determined that my children would have opportunities I never had. Watching her don her white coat at the ceremony, I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Thomas took a different path, becoming a successful IT specialist instead of pursuing higher education. He had his father's charm, but thankfully none of his irresponsibility. My children became the center of my universe, and I believed our bonds were unbreakable. That changed when Sophia met Anthony during her residency. He was a pharmaceutical sales representative who frequented the hospital where she worked. Their romance progressed quickly, too quickly for my comfort. Within 6 months they were engaged, and I started noticing subtle changes in my daughter. Our weekly Sunday brunches became monthly, then sporadic. Our long phone conversations shortened to brief texts. From the beginning, something about Anthony made me uneasy. He was handsome and outwardly charming, but there was a controlling edge to his behavior. He often answered questions directed at Sophia, placed his hand on her arm when she expressed opinions different from his, and made small comments undermining her confidence. I tried gently sharing my concerns once, but Sophia dismissed them as me being overprotective. Anthony came from money, old money, as his mother Judith frequently reminded everyone. His family owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across the Northwest, and they lived in a sprawling estate in the wealthiest part of Portland. From the moment I met them at the engagement dinner, they made it clear they found me lacking. Judith referred to my career as quaint and seemed surprised I could maintain a conversation about current events. As wedding preparations began, I offered repeatedly to contribute financially, even though it would have stretched my retirement savings. Each time, Anthony or his parents politely declined, saying they wanted to give Sophia the wedding she deserves. The implication that I couldn't provide that stung deeply. Gradually, I found myself being excluded from more and more of the planning. Dress shopping venue visits, menu tastings, all happened without me, with Sophia apologetically explaining afterward that things had been last minute, or that Anthony's mother had taken care of it. My daughter, once so close to me, was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. Despite being sidelined in the wedding planning, I maintained my enthusiasm for Sophia's big day. I wanted so badly to be happy for her, even as I wrestled with my concerns about Anthony and his family's influence. I reminded myself that this was her life, her choice, and my role was to support her no matter what. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sophia called me with an unexpected request. "Mum," she said, her voice tinged with excitement, "I was wondering if I could borrow Grandma's pearl necklace for the ceremony, for my something borrowed." The necklace she referred to was my most treasured possession, a single strand of perfectly matched pearls that had belonged to my mother and her mother before that. It was the only heirloom of value our family possessed, dating back 4 generations. My mother had placed it around my neck on my own wedding day, whispering that the pearls carried the wisdom and love of all the women who had worn them before. "Of course you can wear it, sweetheart," I replied without hesitation. Nothing would make me happier. And I meant it. Whatever reservations I had about the marriage, I would never withhold something that would bring my daughter joy on her wedding day. The rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. Anthony's parents had spared no expense with a private room 5-course meal and vintage champagne flowing freely. I wore was my best dress, a navy blue cocktail number I'd splurged on years ago for a hospital fundraiser, though I still felt underdressed compared to Judith's designer ensemble and diamond earrings that caught the light with every movement of her head. During a quiet moment before dinner began, I presented Sophia with the velvet box containing the pearl necklace. "These have been worn by every bride in our family since your great-great-grandmother," I told her, fastening the clasp around her neck. "They've witnessed a century of love stories." Sophia touched the pearls reverently. "They're beautiful, Mum. Thank you." For a moment, I glimpsed my little girl again in her eyes. The moment was interrupted by Anthony's mother. "Those are lovely," Judith said, examining the necklace with a critical eye. "Simple but charming, eh?" "Of course we've set aside the diamond pendant from Anthony's grandmother for the ceremony tomorrow. Family tradition, you understand." Throughout the evening, similar moments continued to unfold. Anthony's father made a toast, referring to Sophia as the daughter we never had, while I sat unacknowledged. When conversation turned to the wedding preparations, Judith detailed her extensive involvement, while commenting, "We wanted to spare Minnie the stress given her work commitments." The fact that I'd repeatedly offered to help and had adjusted my schedule specifically for wedding preparations went unmentioned. Later, as guests mingled after dinner, I overheard a conversation between Judith and Anthony in a quiet corner. "Remember what we discussed about tomorrow," Judith murmured. "We need to limit Minnie's involvement. She means well, but she doesn't understand our kind of event." "I'll handle it, Mother," Anthony replied. "Sophia won't even notice." I slipped away before they saw me, heart heavy with the realization that I was being deliberately marginalized at my own daughter's wedding. Still, I resolved to maintain my dignity and focus on supporting Sophia. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful. I arrived early at the luxury hotel where the ceremony and reception would take place, making my way to the bridal suite, where Sophia was getting ready with her bridesmaids. The atmosphere was tense rather than celebratory, with Anthony's sisters Catherine and Jennifer dominating the room, directing the hairstylist and makeup artist, while hardly acknowledging my presence. Sophia, seated at the vanity in her silk robe, gave me a distracted smile. "Mum, you're here? Good." She seemed nervous, but that was to be expected on her wedding day. "I brought you some chamomile tea," I said, setting down the travel mug I'd prepared at home. "It always calms your nerves." "Oh, we've ordered champagne and orange juice for mimosas," Catherine interjected smoothly. "Much more festive." For the next 2 hours, I found myself relegated to the periphery of the activity, handing over items when asked, but otherwise unneeded. I noticed my mother's pearl necklace laid out carefully on the vanity table alongside other jewellery pieces that were presumably from Anthony's family. Around noon, Jennifer suggested I might want to take a break before the ceremony. "We've got everything under control here and you'll want to be fresh for the photos," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Feeling dismissed but unwilling to create tension on Sophia's day, I agreed to go have lunch and return closer to the ceremony time. As I gathered my purse to leave, I glanced back at Sophia, surrounded by her soon-to-be sisters-in-law rather than me. The pearls still lay gleaming on the vanity, waiting to connect my daughter to our family's past as she stepped into her future. When I returned to the bridal suite after a solitary lunch at the hotel restaurant, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The light-hearted chatter and bustling activity had been replaced by a heavy silence. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed in her wedding dress, her face pale and eyes red-rimmed. Anthony stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, while his mother paced near the vanity table. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately concerned. "Sophia, are you feeling ill?" Judith turned to me, her expression tight with barely concealed hostility. "How convenient that you've returned just now." Confused, I looked from her to Sophia. "What's happening? What's going on?" Anthony stepped forward. "The pearl necklace is missing." "Missing?" I repeated, glancing at the vanity where I'd last seen it. "It must be somewhere in the room. Did someone move it?" "We've searched everywhere," Jennifer said, arms crossed over her bridesmaid dress. "It's simply gone." Sophia finally looked up at me, her expression a mixture of distress and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Mum, it disappeared after you left." The implication hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. I felt a chill run through me as I realized what they were suggesting. "Surely you don't think," I began, but Judith cut me off. "I think we should check everyone's belongings," she announced, her gaze fixed pointedly on me, "just to be thorough." My heart was pounding, but I maintained my composure. "Of course," I said, lifting my chin slightly. "Start with mine." I held out my purse, determined to prove my innocence and put an end to this absurdity. The necklace was precious to me. The suggestion that I would steal it from my own daughter was not only hurtful, but completely nonsensical. Anthony stepped forward to take my purse, his expression unreadable. He made a show of looking through it, removing items one by one: my wallet, a compact tissues lip balm. Then he reached deeper into an inner pocket and pulled out something that made my blood run cold. There, dangling from his fingers, was my mother's pearl necklace. "That's impossible," I whispered, genuinely shocked. "I never touched it after giving it to Sophia." The room went deathly silent. Sophia rose slowly from the bed, her wedding dress rustling. Her face had transformed from distress to cold anger. "How could you?" she said, her voice breaking. "Why would you steal from me on my wedding day?" "Sophia, I didn't," I protested, reaching for her hands. "You know I would never." She stepped back, avoiding my touch. "I thought I knew you, but clearly I don't." "This is ridiculous," I said, looking around the room desperately for anyone who might believe me. "Someone must have put it there." "I would never take back something I gave you freely." "Who would do that, Mum?" Sophia demanded. "Who else would want to ruin my wedding day? Was it because you never liked Anthony? Because his family has money and you're jealous?" Each accusation felt like a physical blow. This wasn't my daughter speaking. These weren't her thoughts. Someone had poisoned her against me, and now this setup was the final step in driving us apart. "Sophia," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, "I have supported you in everything. I've worked my entire life to give you opportunities. I love you more than anything in this world. Why would I sabotage your happiness?" For a moment, doubt flickered across her face. Then Anthony put his arm around her shoulders. "People do strange things when they feel replaced," he said smoothly. "Maybe your mother isn't as happy about our marriage as she's pretended to be." Judith nodded in agreement. "It's not unheard of for mothers to become emotionally unstable when their children marry, especially single mothers who've been overly dependent." I stared at them, stunned by the calculated cruelty of their words. They had been planning this, I realized. This was the culmination of months of subtle alienation, of driving a wedge between Sophia and me. "That's enough," I said firmly. "Sophia, we need to talk alone. There's something wrong here." But Sophia shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "Get out," she said, her voice hardening. "Get out. You're not family anymore." Those words cut deeper than any knife could have. I stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. My daughter, my beautiful child, whom I had raised with all the love in my heart, was rejecting me based on a terrible lie. Anthony moved toward the door, opening it with a theatrical gesture. "I think it's best if you leave, Minnie. We have a ceremony to prepare for." I looked once more at Sophia, willing her to see through this deception, but she had turned away, her shoulders shaking with sobs that Anthony's sisters rushed to console. Drawing on every ounce of dignity I possessed, I straightened my spine, gathered my purse, and walked toward the door. As I passed Anthony, I looked directly into his eyes, searching for some flicker of conscience, but found only cold satisfaction. In the hallway, several wedding guests had gathered, attracted by the commotion. They stepped back as I emerged, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and embarrassment. News would spread quickly, I knew. By the end of the day, everyone would have heard that Sophia's mother had been ejected from the wedding for stealing, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. With my head held high, I walked through the elegant hotel lobby, past flower arrangements that cost more than a month of my salary, past guests in expensive attire, who whispered as I passed. Outside in the parking lot, I heard someone calling my name. Thomas jogged up, concern etched on his face. "Mum, what's happening?" Someone said there was a problem with Sophia. The sight of my son, the one person who knew me well enough to doubt the accusations, nearly broke my composure. "They're saying I stole your grandmother's necklace," I said, my voice finally cracking. Sophia asked me to leave. Thomas's expression hardened. "That's ridiculous. What's really going on?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think Anthony and his family planned this." "I'm coming with you," Thomas declared, already reaching for his car keys. "No," I said firmly, placing my hand on his arm. "Stay for your sister. She needs someone from our family there, even if she doesn't realize it yet." After a moment of internal struggle, Thomas nodded reluctantly. "I'll call you right after," he promised. "And I'm going to figure out what really happened." Driving home alone, the beautiful day seemed to mock my pain. Sunlight sparkled on the river as I crossed the bridge. Families strolled in the park. Couples held hands on sidewalk cafes. Normal life continued all around, while mine had just imploded. In the silence of my car, the question played on repeat. How had my mother's necklace ended up in my purse? I knew with absolute certainty I hadn't put it there. Someone had deliberately set me up to look like a thief, to create a rift between Sophia and me that might never heal, and they had succeeded completely. The house felt unbearably empty when I arrived home. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. The dress I had carefully chosen for my daughter's wedding, a pale blue silk that had cost more than I usually spent on myself, now seemed like a costume from a play that had ended disastrously. I tried calling Sophia's cell phone, though I knew she wouldn't answer. My text messages went unread. "Please let me explain. We need to talk. I love you. Please believe me." The silence from her end was deafening. Thomas called that evening, his voice tight with anger. "I stayed through the ceremony," he reported. "It was all so fake, Anthony's family acting like nothing had happened, Sophia going through the motions like a robot. I left before the reception." "How was she?" I couldn't help asking, still worried about my daughter, despite everything. "Honestly, she didn't look happy, Mum. Not like a bride should. Something's very wrong with this whole situation." Over the next few days, a small support system formed around me. Thomas visited daily, his protective instincts in full force. My longtime friend Barbara, whom I'd known since nursing school, brought groceries and sat with me for hours, letting me talk through the confusion and pain. "I've known you for 30 years, Barbara said firmly. "You're the most honest person I know. Someone set you up, and we're going to figure out why." But away from my inner circle, I felt the community's judgment. A neighbour who usually stopped to chat hurried past with just a nod. My church prayer group leader called to say, Perhaps I should take some time before returning. Whispers followed me at the grocery store. Apparently, Judith had wasted no time spreading her version of events. The worst moment came when I received a text from a nurse I'd mentored for years. Just heard what happened at Sophia's wedding. So disappointed in you, Minnie. I took a leave of absence from my part-time nursing position, unable to face my colleagues' speculation. The days stretched before me, empty and purposeless. I'd built my life around my children, particularly Sophia. Without her, I felt adrift. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. I lost interest in my garden, in cooking, in the mystery novels I usually devoured. Sleep became elusive, and when I did manage it, I had vivid dreams of Sophia as a little girl, reaching for me with trust in her eyes, only to transform into the cold, accusing woman at the wedding. One afternoon, searching for my mother's old cookie recipe to distract myself, I came across her journal in the back of a kitchen drawer. I'd never read it completely, feeling it was too private, but now I opened it, seeking some connection to my family's past. My mother had written about her own challenges raising children during financial hardship, keeping the family together through my father's long illness, facing life alone after his death. One passage particularly stood out. The measure of our strength is not in never falling, but in rising after each fall with grace and forgiveness, while never surrendering our truth. Those words became my mantra in the dark days that followed. I might be broken by my daughter's rejection, but I would not surrender my truth. I had not taken that necklace. Someone had deliberately tried to destroy our relationship, and I needed to understand why. During quiet evenings, Barbara would sit with me at the kitchen table, helping me reconstruct the timeline of events. Who had access to your purse? She asked practically. Who would benefit from creating this situation? Thomas, meanwhile, had been conducting his own investigation. Anthony has a history, Mum, he reported after speaking with a former colleague of Sophia's. Apparently, he dated another doctor before Sophia, and when they broke up, she transferred to a different hospital. People thought it was strange at the time. Do you think he's abusive? I asked, the fear that had been building in me finally given voice. Thomas hesitated, not physically from what I can tell, but controlling, isolating definitely, and his family enables it. This information should have made me feel vindicated, but only deepened my worry for Sophia. If Anthony and his family had orchestrated my removal from her life, what else might they be capable of? As days turned into a week, I drew strength from unexpected sources. A package arrived from my ex-husband, Frank, containing a brief note. Thomas told me what happened. I know you, Minnie. You didn't do this. Stay strong. Inside was a gift certificate for a spa day. After 15 years of minimal contact, this gesture of support brought tears to my eyes. I began forcing myself to follow routines again, morning walks, afternoon gardening, evening phone calls with friends. I resumed my volunteer work at the community centre, though I avoided situations where I might face too many questions. Slowly, incrementally, I felt myself becoming stronger even as the pain remained. Through it all, the question persisted. Why would Anthony or his family go to such lengths to separate Sophia from me? What could they possibly gain? The answer remained elusive, but I clung to the hope that eventually the truth would emerge. A week after the wedding, Thomas arrived at my house with an intensity in his expression I hadn't seen before. "Mum," he said, before even taking off his jacket, "I have something you need to see." He pulled out his laptop and set it on the kitchen table. Remember Jim from college? He works in IT security at the hotel where the wedding was held. I've been talking to him about what happened, and he agreed to help. My heart began to race. What did he do? He accessed the security footage from the day of the wedding, Thomas said, opening his computer. It took some convincing and maybe a bit of rule-bending, but he understood how important this is. Barbara, who had come over to check on me, leaned forward. "What did you find?" Thomas pulled up a video file. "This is footage from the hallway outside the bridal suite, time-stamped during the period when Mum went for lunch." The video showed the elegant corridor of the luxury hotel, the door to Sophia's bridal suite visible in the frame. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Anthony appeared, looking carefully in both directions, before using a keycard to enter the room. The timestamp showed 12:17 p.m., about 15 minutes after I had left. He was alone in there for nearly 10 minutes, Thomas explained, fast-forwarding slightly. The footage showed Anthony emerging at 12:26 p.m., again checking the hallway before walking quickly away. That doesn't prove anything, I said, though hope was beginning to rise in me. He might have had a legitimate reason to go in. Wait, Thomas said, pulling up another file. Jim found this footage from the lobby camera. This video showed me sitting alone in the hotel restaurant, clearly visible through its glass walls, eating my solitary lunch. I was nowhere near the bridal suite when Anthony entered it. And here's the most damning part, Thomas continued, opening a third file. This footage from a camera positioned in a different angle of the hallway showed something that made me gasp. Anthony was standing near a service alcove, partially concealed, watching as I walked from the elevator toward the bridal suite after my lunch. In his hand was something small that caught the light, the pearl necklace. As I approached the suite door, he slipped back out of frame. He was waiting for you to return, Thomas said grimly. He planted the necklace in your purse, then created the scene about it being missing. I sat back, a strange mixture of vindication and renewed pain washing over me. But why? What does he gain by turning Sophia against me? Barbara, who had been watching silently, spoke up. Control, classic isolation tactic. Remove someone's support system and they become more dependent on you. There's more, Thomas said quietly. I've been looking into Anthony's background. He presents himself as this successful pharmaceutical rep from a wealthy family, but there are some inconsistencies. His family does have money, but Anthony has gambling debts, significant ones. How do you know this? I asked, surprised. I have a friend who works at a casino in the area. Anthony's well known there and not in a good way. He's been banned from several tables. The pieces began falling into place in my mind. The necklace, it's not particularly valuable in terms of money, but it's an antique. He could have been planning to find it later and sell it. Exactly, Thomas nodded. And who would question him if he said it went missing during the honeymoon? By then, you'd be established as the thief who tried to steal it in the first place. I stared at the frozen image of Anthony on the screen, this man who had so systematically worked to destroy my relationship with my daughter. Anger surged through me, replacing the hurt and confusion of the past week. We need to show this to Sophia, I said decisively. Thomas hesitated. I'm not sure she'll agree to see you. She hasn't returned any of my calls since I left the wedding early. Then we need to find another way, I insisted. I've given her space, but now that we have proof, I can't just sit back while she's married to someone who would do this. Barbara touched my arm gently. You need to be prepared, Minnie. Even with this evidence, Sophia might not be ready to accept it. If he's been manipulating her for months, it won't be easy for her to see the truth. I know, I acknowledged, but I have to try. She's my daughter. Over the next day, we developed a plan. Thomas would contact Sophia, saying he had her wedding gifts at his apartment and needed her to come pick them up. He wouldn't mention me or the video evidence. Once she was there, I would join them, and we would show her the footage together. The night before our planned confrontation, I hardly slept. What if Sophia refused to believe the evidence? What if Anthony had already convinced her that any such footage was manipulated? What if our relationship was damaged beyond repair? But beneath these fears ran a current of determination. My mother's words from her journal echoed in my mind, "Never surrender your truth." Whatever happened tomorrow, I would face it with dignity and the knowledge that I was fighting not just for myself, but for my daughter's well-being. The next morning, I arrived at Thomas's apartment an hour early, too anxious to wait at home. We reviewed the security footage once more, ensuring everything was queued up correctly. Thomas had even prepared a timeline document showing the sequence of events, anticipating that Sophia might be too shocked or defensive to process the information clearly at first. She's coming at 11, Thomas said, glancing at his watch. I told her I had a work meeting at noon, so she couldn't postpone. At 10:55, my heart nearly stopped at the sound of a car door slamming outside. Thomas peeked through the blinds. It's her, he confirmed. She's alone. I moved to the kitchen out of immediate sight from the entryway, as we had planned. Thomas wanted a moment to greet Sophia normally before revealing my presence, concerned that she might leave immediately otherwise. The doorbell rang, and Thomas answered. I could hear the forced casualness in his voice. Hey sis, thanks for coming. I can't stay long, Sophia replied, her voice sounding tired and strained. Anthony's expecting me back for lunch with his parents. This won't take long, Thomas assured her. Come on in. I heard their footsteps moving into the living room, followed by a sharp intake of breath from Sophia. Mum, what are you doing here, Thomas? You said... Please just listen, Thomas interrupted. We need to show you something important. If this is some attempt to defend what she did, Sophia began hotly. I stepped forward, then, forcing myself to remain calm, despite the pain of hearing my daughter speak about me with such anger. Sophia, I know you're hurt and angry. I understand why you believe what you saw, but I'm asking you for 5 minutes to show you something that might change how you see what happened. Sophia stood rigidly by the door, dressed in an outfit I didn't recognize more formal and conservative than her usual style. Her face was thinner than I remembered from just a week ago, with shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. Despite her hostile expression, my heart ached with love for her. 5 minutes, she said finally. That's all. Thomas guided her to the couch and opened his laptop. This is security footage from the hotel on your wedding day, he explained. I obtained it legally through a colleague who works there, he added, which wasn't entirely accurate but would prevent her from dismissing it outright. As the videos played, Anthony entering the bridal suite alone, me clearly visible in the restaurant. During that time, Anthony waiting with the necklace before my return, Sophia's expression transformed. The defensive anger crumbled, replaced first by confusion, then dawning horror. No, she whispered, shaking her head slightly. He wouldn't... Watch, Thomas said gently, playing the footage again. When it ended, Sophia sat in stunned silence, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. I wanted desperately to go to her to hold her, as I had when she was a child, and her world had been shaken, but I forced myself to wait, giving her space to process. Why? She finally asked, her voice small. Why would he do this? I explained what Thomas had discovered about Anthony's gambling debts, the theory that he might have planned to sell the necklace. But more than that, I added carefully, I think he wanted to separate you from me, from your family. Sophia's face crumpled, tears spilling over. It wasn't just this, she admitted shakily. There have been so many things. He convinced me you were trying to control my life, that you were jealous of his family's wealth. Every time I wanted to include you in wedding plans, there was some reason why it wasn't a good idea. I moved to sit beside her, then relieved when she didn't pull away. I noticed you becoming more distant, but I thought it was just natural separation, you creating your own life. It wasn't natural at all, Sophia said bitterly. He would make comments after every time we saw you pointing out things you supposedly said wrong or ways you embarrassed me. After a while, I started seeing our interactions through his perspective, even though deep down it never felt right. Thomas joined us, sitting on Sophia's other side. Has he isolated you from others too, friends, colleagues? Sophia nodded slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. My friend Melissa, he said she was jealous of our relationship and trying to sabotage it. I haven't spoken to her in months. And my mentor at the hospital, Dr. Levine Anthony, claimed he heard him making inappropriate comments about me, so I requested a transfer to a different department. The manipulation ran deeper than I had imagined. My daughter, so intelligent and strong-willed, had been systematically cut off from everyone who cared about her. After the wedding, Sophia continued, her voice strengthening. I confronted him about the necklace. I said it made no sense for Mum to take it. He became so angry, not yelling but cold, scary. He said I was being naive, that I didn't know what mothers like mine were capable of when they felt replaced. My stomach clenched at this glimpse of Anthony's true nature. What happened then? I asked gently. I've been staying with a colleague the past 2 nights, Sophia admitted. I told Anthony I needed space to process everything. He's been calling constantly, and his mother keeps texting about how I'm hurting him, how families need to stick together through difficult times. You don't have to go back, Thomas said firmly. Sophia looked between us, fresh tears welling in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Mum. The things I said to you, I can never take them back. I took her hand in mine, feeling the first real hope in over a week. You were manipulated by someone who very deliberately set out to come between us. I don't blame you for believing what you saw. But I should have known you would never steal from me, she insisted. After everything you've done for me my whole life, how could I have believed that that's how abusers work? I said quietly. They create doubt, then exploit it. They isolate you from people who would help you see the truth. Sophia leaned against my shoulder, then something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. What do I do now? She whispered. That's your decision, I told her, though every part of me wanted to bundle her up and bring her home where I could protect her. But whatever you choose, you're not alone anymore. We're here and we'll support you. For the first time since entering the apartment, Sophia smiled faintly. I think I need to talk to a lawyer, she said. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. Thomas squeezed her shoulder. I know a good one. She specializes in cases like this. As the 3 of us sat together on that couch, the pain of the past week didn't magically disappear. The road ahead would be difficult, with Anthony unlikely to accept the end of his control gracefully, but something fundamental had been restored: the trust between me and my daughter, the family bond that no outside force could permanently sever. 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't really a wedding at all, Sophia and I sat together on my back porch swing, watching the spring flowers bloom in the garden. The annulment had been finalized 3 weeks earlier, after a process that proved both emotionally exhausting and ultimately liberating for my daughter. The lawyer says Anthony's family has finally agreed to stop contesting the restraining order. Sophia mentioned sipping her tea. Apparently, they're worried about their business reputation if things get too public. That's a relief, I said, though I remained wary. People like Anthony and his mother rarely accepted defeat gracefully. The past months had been a journey of healing and rediscovery for both of us. After showing Anthony the security footage and informing him she had consulted a lawyer, Sophia had moved back into my house temporarily. At first, Anthony had alternated between rage and desperate pleas for reconciliation, followed by his mother's attempts to paint Sophia as mentally unstable and influenced by me. But the evidence was irrefutable. When Anthony's gambling debts came to light during the legal proceedings, far more extensive than even Thomas had discovered, his family's support had wavered. They were more concerned with protecting their reputation than their son's marriage to a woman who now saw through their facade. The pearl necklace had been returned as part of the legal settlement. It now rested in a safe deposit box at the bank, its sentimental value intact, but its innocence somewhat tarnished by the ordeal. Sophia and I had attended therapy together, working through not only the trauma of the wedding day, but also the subtle ways Anthony had manipulated our relationship over time. Those sessions had sometimes been painful, revealing patterns and misunderstandings that had existed even before Anthony entered our lives. But they had ultimately strengthened our bond, creating a more honest and equal relationship between us. Dr. Harrison says I'm making good progress, Sophia shared, referring to her individual therapist. She thinks I should consider dating again by the end of the year. No rush, I said, careful to respect her autonomy while still offering maternal guidance. The right relationship will come when you're truly ready. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. I've learned so much about what I don't want. Now I need to figure out what I do want. One unexpected outcome of our ordeal had been my increased involvement with a support group for parents estranged from their children. Though my estrangement had been brief and resolved, I found purpose in helping others navigate similar pain, sharing my experience and offering hope that relationships could be mended. Thomas is coming for dinner tonight, I reminded Sophia, and Barbara's bringing that key lime pie you like. A family dinner, Sophia smiled. That sounds perfect. Our family had changed in composition over the years, first with Frank's departure, now with the brief addition and subtraction of Anthony, but its core remained strong. Thomas had been our rock throughout the ordeal, his steady support never wavering. Barbara had become an honorary family member, her wisdom and practical advice invaluable during the darkest days. Looking at my daughter now, I saw both the child I had raised and the woman she was becoming. The ordeal had aged her in some ways, but had also given her a wisdom and resilience that would serve her well. She had returned to her original hospital department, where her mentor, Dr. Levine, had welcomed her back without judgment. She was reconnecting with friends like Melissa, rebuilding the support network that Anthony had systematically dismantled. "You know what I've learned through all this?" I said, watching a hummingbird dart among the flowers. "Trust, but verify. Love with your whole heart, but never lose yourself in someone else's version of reality." Sophia squeezed my hand. "I think Grandma would approve of that lesson." "She would," I agreed, thinking of my mother's journal. "She always said that resilience isn't about avoiding pain, but about finding your way back to joy afterward." We had both been deeply wounded by Anthony's deception, but we had not been destroyed by it. In fact, in some ways, we had emerged stronger, more aware of our vulnerabilities, yes, but also more appreciative of our authentic connections. That evening, as we gathered around my dining table, Sophia, Thomas, Barbara, and me, I was struck by the simple pleasure of being surrounded by people who truly knew and loved each other. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter that felt healing after so many tears. As I looked at Sophia across the table, animated, as she described a challenging case at the hospital, I felt profound gratitude. We had nearly lost this, the natural flow of family life, the security of unconditional love. But truth had prevailed, and bonds that seemed irrevocably broken had been repaired, different perhaps, but ultimately stronger for having been tested. 3 months later, Sophia wore the pearl necklace again, this time to her white coat ceremony, as she began a fellowship in pediatric surgery. As I fastened the clasp around her neck, our eyes met in the mirror. "Full circle," she said softly. "A new beginning," I corrected, smoothing the pearls against her collar. "With wisdom from the past, but not defined by it." That wisdom was hard-won through pain I would never have chosen for either of us. But as I watched my daughter step confidently into her future, I knew that some lessons about love, truth, and the unbreakable bonds of family could only be learned through fire. We had emerged not unscathed but undefeated, and that made all the difference. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately made your relationship stronger? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel for more stories of healing and resilience. Remember, even our deepest wounds can become the foundation for our greatest wisdom. Thank you for walking this path with me today.